Okay, so I want to take a look at the secondary for Oklahoma and kind of some of the buzz that we're hearing here in fall camp and even what we're hearing out of spring, because I think we've been able to build upon that. And coming into fall camp and into these scrimmages, if you're an Oklahoma fan, I feel like you're maybe building confidence that the secondary will be better this year. And you're maybe going to see some guys take some leaps, take some strides, and you're going to see this secondary potentially take the next step into being elite from where they were last season. And if we look at last season, one of the biggest hiccups with the secondary was zone coverage, right? They just weren't really good in that. They did well in man, but I mean, multiple times you saw the zone coverage just break down, and that's when teams got the big chunk plays. And I think there's one piece that Oklahoma got with Brandon Hall and Jay Valai that I think is really going to, one, help some of your depth issues, but two, help anchor your zone coverage down a little bit. And that's going to be Dez Malone. We'll talk about him here in just a minute, though. But I want to talk about some true freshmen that have, from the spring till now, they have been shining on the field. Would you even consider them a rising star? I don't know. Y'all are going to have to let me know down in the comments below. But that's going to be, we're going to start with Eli Bowen. Eli Bowen, he gets here on campus, and you're starting to hear the buzz with Eli Bowen, his athleticism. And you're starting to see kind of what he did at Denton Guyer translate to the college level. And when I tell you about what he did at Denton Guyer, you're going to ask yourself, how is this kid a 3-star cornerback? Just last year, 34 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, 2 blocked field goals, and a 43-yard rushing touchdown. Then you see him back in the 6A Division II state semifinals back in 2022, where he had 35 tackles, 6 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 4 touchdowns. Then you go to 2021, his sophomore year, when Denton Guyer finished 14-2 and made the state championship game. 54 tackles, a team-high 10 interceptions, 3 returned for a touchdown. Eli Bowen was just that dude in high school. And from what it sounds like, he's being that dude here in scrimmages and all throughout fall camp. But he's not the only true freshman that you've heard about this offseason. You've also heard a lot about Reggie Powers. Reggie Powers being that 4-star safety that Oklahoma got late in the 2024 cycle. And we all kind of raved about it. We all told you, guys, when Reggie Powers gets on campus, this is the guy you are going to want to watch. He was the nation's 144th prospect on 3, top 170 with 247. Reggie Powers, he was an all-conference guy, registered 82 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 6 pass breakups, and a forced fumble, and tallied 255 kickoff return yards as a senior. Again, Reggie Powers, an extremely athletic guy, and all throughout the spring and the summer, you heard about Reggie Powers. You heard about that athleticism. I mean, we all told you this is going to be a guy that this upcoming season, it would shock us if he did not get rotational minutes. He's been that good. We've even said, could this be a guy that plays as Cheetah for Brent Venables? But then you talk about Michael Boganowski. You guys remember him? Because that's a guy who we've heard that can be an enforcer. He can come out in the field. He can lay the hits, but he's also really good in that secondary as well. So those are 3 true freshmen that we have heard about so far this offseason. And that's not even to talk about Jeremiah Newcomb or Jaden Hardy or any of those other guys, right? These are just 3 guys that we have heard nothing but great things about, how they're making noise in those rooms. And if you're a guy like Robert Spears-Jennings, Makari Vickers, Jacoby Johnson, I think we all want to see those guys take the next step this season. We all want to see them make those improvements. And although not every single one of them is going to be able to solidify themselves a starting role going into next year, maybe one of them can. But the other guys can solidify themselves as a solid rotational piece and maybe a starter down the road. And I look at Robert Spears-Jennings in that safety room and say, I think he's got to be the one that takes the biggest step, because that safety room is losing Billy Bowman. And we've seen the pictures. You've heard the hype around Robert Spears-Jennings. Last year, he had 38 total tackles, 20 solos, and 1 pass breakup. If Robert Spears-Jennings can go out there put up similar numbers or even better this year, you're looking at him as probably your leading safety going into next season. But you've also got Peyton Bowen, and he's one of those guys that he's hard to keep off the field. And you guys heard about that interception that he made in one of the first few fall practices. Peyton Bowen just continues to show off that athleticism and show why he was a potential 5-star kid out of high school and why multiple schools around the country, top schools around the country, wanted him. But then I look at guys like Jaden Rowe. That's a dark horse to find out what he's going to be. If he can be healthy, he runs a sub 4.5 40. That could be a guy that he hits the field and he could be an absolute monster for you. I look at what Makari Vickers did. The little bit of time that he was on the field last year. Makari Vickers out of high school was a guy that Alabama wanted very desperately. And then I look at Jacoby Johnson. He was in the top 5 freshmen last year in terms of snaps produced. Jacoby Johnson was a guy that we kind of toyed at the idea. Is he going to play wide receiver? Or is he going to play corner? Because he's that athletic. He can do both things, right? You look at what Oklahoma's got in this room and say, with everything they've gotten, those up-and-coming stars, Oklahoma's secondary has the potential to take the leap and be an Alabama-like secondary or a Georgia-like secondary. But then to go back at what we were talking about at the beginning of the video, zone coverage. That was Oklahoma's biggest pain point last year. Well, that and depth at the cornerback room. You lose Gentry Williams, who was an exceptional, a borderline first-round talent. It hurts you. And so the question was, what was Oklahoma going to go do this year to address those depth issues? Well, they only went and got one of the best cornerbacks in the portal, in Dez Malone. And Dez Malone had a 69.2 grade for his efforts in 23. And he had a 68.2 in run defense and a 68.1 in pass coverage. In 2022, he had a 70.8 pass coverage grade from PFF. Then you look at, in 2 years, what he did on the field for the Aztecs. Well, 90 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 4 interception, 12 pass breakups. He only allowed 3 total touchdowns on him. That's really impressive. And this is a guy that you bring him in. If one of your corners goes down, he's an exceptional piece that can fill in at the starting role. But he's also a guy that if you're starting to hurt in zone coverage, you can put him out there. And he's the guy that's probably going to be able to help anchor down and maybe help some of the guys be able to play in zone coverage just a little bit better. So when you hear some of these things coming out in fall camp about the true freshmen and some of the guys that have been here for about a year or two, and they're taking those steps, if you're an Oklahoma fan, that makes you feel good. And this makes you believe that this secondary for Oklahoma could probably be one of the best secondaries we have seen here in Norman in a long time. So if you're an Oklahoma fan and you guys have enjoyed this, make sure you guys hit that like, you guys hit that subscribe button. And as always, make sure you guys are joining the discussion, jumping down in the comments below, giving me your guys' thoughts.